Alright, it's a 44-year-old motorcycle cover here. It's where the oil pump goes on there for the oil injection, and got to make a gasket for it. Gasket material you buy at the auto parts store. Need some steel balls, maybe some screws. This ball fits like so. As long as the ball don't go through the hole, looks alright to me. It's your gasket material, which you have to kind of wet it and then iron it to get it flat after they roll it up like that, especially if it's been in there for a while. Make sure you got your thing covered here. Feel with your finger, put it over the hole. Got a chamfer on that hole. It's a little hard to cut there, but as you can see, it does mark the hole pretty well for you. Should cut all the way through, but because they got that hole chamfered, that doesn't work. But it does mark it real well. And it's just a dowel pin hole anyway. Put that on there, put the dowel back in the hole. Come over here and do the other one. Feel with your fingers where the thing goes. That's some thick paper. Spot. Use these little scissors. And then we can put the other dowel pin in. That kind of positions it so you can put these other ones in. And you'll see the steel ball, because it has a sharp edge, you can feel with your finger until you find that hole. And then you can put the bolt in there. And as you go along, you end up getting these things all marked on there. Another one right there. Steel balls, you get them from a bearing supply store. They're pretty cheap. It might cost you 40 or 50 cents for a ball, about that size. Don't cost much. Doesn't have to be a perfect ball either. Could be a pachinko ball or something like that. It doesn't have to be, you know, ball bearing. But you'll find these ball bearings are pretty handy things to have around. You can use them for a lot of things. You're using a wheel puller or something like that. Maybe that's got them all, I think. Alright. Okay. But the dowel pin. I always like to keep a supply of balls around for things like that. Comes in pretty handy. Okay. Now it's time to blue it up. Okay. Now we have what they call Prussian blue. It's I don't know, like a grease like tallow with a little bit of blue coloring in it. I suppose you could just use regular grease, particularly if it had a little color to it. It would probably show up pretty well. And this stuff is easily wiped off, by the way, and it doesn't dry. It just stays blue like that. Put a little bit on your finger. Go around the surfaces. You want to be careful not to bung up the surfaces so the stuff will dry on there. Now what I'm doing here now is putting this on so I can mark it where to cut it, and so I know exactly where the gasket sealing surfaces should go. This is probably the boring part of the video, but I suppose I could edit it so it doesn't seem like it's taking me so long to put this stuff on there. That's going to tell me pretty much where I got to cut this stuff. And like I say, stuff wipes off fairly easily. What I want is to make a temporary coloring that I can wipe off the gasket. I'll put the dowel pins back in here. So that's good enough. Then figure out, you don't want to get this in that bluing until you're ready, so put it down like that. Put a few of these bolts in there to hold it in the right position. Then just pull on. Also use just a piece of plastic or something like that to rub it with. Anything to force it down into that Prussian blue. Just enough so you know where to cut the gasket, particularly on the inside. It's because this particular gasket's a little tricky. It's very thin too, so the gasket paper's thick, but the sealing area is fairly thin. So after you do that, pull out your screws. And like I say, this bluing, yeah, you get it on the screws and things, but you'll be able to wipe it off. There's nothing to it. Take out your dowel pins, and there's your marking of your gasket, which I'll use to cut out with these small little surgical scissors. Are usually the best thing, I think, for making gaskets, and that's all there is to it. There you go. And you can see how I made a case gasket for this thing. I'll probably use a little bit of old Permatex or silicone sealant or something like that to make it stay in place as I put it together. But the bolts, once they go through the holes, they'll hold it in place. Usually when I install a gasket, what I like to use is oil. So the oil goes into the paper, embeds in the paper with the oil. But that's it. That's how I made the gasket. If you can't buy them, you have to make them. That's all there is to it. And it's not that hard to do. It doesn't take too awful long. It takes longer to make the video than it does to just cut the thing, though. I can tell you that. Also, check real closely with your hands to make sure you haven't bunged up any surfaces on here. And of course, after it's assembled on the engine, you can use a razor blade to trim off any gasket that sticks proud of the case. It doesn't matter on the inside, but on the outside you might want it to look nice and get rid of any edge that maybe isn't trimmed close enough or something. But I got some plugs in here to keep dirt out of my bearing surfaces, and that's all there is to it. But it's very important you don't bung that up.